To prepare a prime rib roast, trim off any fat that appears yellow or is a bit excessive. You only need about a finger's width amount of fat to cover the roast. It is not necessary to tie the roast, but if it came that way, it's fine. First, pat the meat dry. The next step is to season the roast. It is important to keep in mind that a delicious roast should taste of meat and little else. If you have selected an excellent piece of meat, simply allow the flavor of the meat to speak for itself. Sprinkle the meat liberally with a quality salt such as Maldon salt and freshly ground pepper. Press the salt and pepper right into the meat. You can even rub it into the meat like this. Note: do not be tempted to smother the meat in too many aromatics or herbs. Be selective. Choose only one or two at most that complement the meat, and use a minimal amount so they don't compete with the natural flavor of the meat. To ensure a good crust, avoid adding liquid seasonings to the surface, although a bit of a paste, such as Dijon mustard, is an exception. Once the roast has been well seasoned, the next step is to coat the surface with a thin layer of oil. Make sure to cover the entire surface of the roast. Finally, the most important thing to do when preparing a roast is to temper it. This means to bring it closer to room temperature. Much like a tempered steak, a tempered roast will take less time to cook to the desired doneness, which means less moisture loss, resulting in a juicier roast. To temper a roast, place it onto a tray lined with a rack. Let the roast sit at room temperature for at least an hour, even up to 4 hours. Large roasts can sit at room temperature for quite a long time, especially when coated with salt and oil, so you need not worry about it spoiling. During this time, the salt, pepper, and other spices will have time to penetrate the meat. Before roasting, you may have to pat it dry one last time, as the salt may have drawn some juices to the surface. Keeping a roast dry is the first step in creating that much coveted crust. Excessive moisture on the surface will prevent a nice crust from forming. Once the roast has properly tempered, place it fat side up into a suitable size roasting pan. If you like, you can place the roast onto a bed of mirepoix or onto a rack. To determine whether or not you want to use a rack, review the related drill down on roasting pans and racks. Lastly, roasting at the proper temperature is essential in obtaining consistent and accurate results. So make sure to test the internal temperature of your oven with an oven thermometer. The best place for roasting is in the middle of the oven, so adjust the rack accordingly so the roast itself sits in the center. This will ensure the roast receives even surround heat.